18 candles. That's what I remember first. Not the words. Not the humiliation. The candles. They were the cheap grocery store kind that bend when they get too warm. Pink and white. Crooked in the icing of a cake I hadn't asked for. 6 relatives sat around the kitchen table. Uncle Ray near the fridge. Nana in her usual chair. My cousin scrolling on her phone. Tyler leaning back like this was entertainment. And Gary standing. He didn't sit for it. He didn't sing. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a folded bill and threw it at my face. It hit my cheek before sliding into my lap. $50. I'm done paying for another man's mistake. No one gasped. No one defended me. 6 witnesses. 6 silent verdicts. I looked at Nana first. She stared at her hands. Uncle Ray's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Tyler smirked. Not cruel, just comfortable. Like this was normal. Maybe it was. Gary pointed toward the hallway. You've got 30 minutes. Pack your things. My things. 18 years of being tolerated in someone else's house. I stood slowly, not because I was calm, but because I refused to let him see me shake. Upstairs I didn't cry. I folded. Jeans. 2 shirts. My nursing school acceptance letter. A photograph of my mother. Marlene. She used to stand between us. When Gary's voice got sharp, she softened it. When his eyes narrowed at my face, the face that didn't look like anyone in this family, she'd brush my hair back and say, "You look like me." That's enough. She died when I was 14. Ovarian cancer. Fast. Merciless. The mask came off at the funeral. She doesn't even look like him. One of Gary's sisters whispered, not quietly enough. He didn't correct her. He just stared at the casket like he'd lost something bigger than a wife. Maybe he had. Maybe she was the only thing keeping him from saying what he'd always wanted to. After she died, the house changed temperature. Literally. Tyler kept his bedroom. I was moved to the converted garage. No insulation. Space heater in winter. Box fan in summer. It builds character, Gary said. Tyler got a new bike that Christmas. I got his old one. Tyler got new cleats. I got his hand-me-downs. When I needed lunch money, Gary would shrug. Ask your real father. The first time he said it, I laughed because I thought it was a joke. The 10th time I stopped laughing. Nana would press folded 20s into my palm when he wasn't looking. For books, she'd whisper. Her guilt had weight. I carried it with everything else. But what hurt wasn't the garage, or the clothes, or even the money. It was the way he looked at me. Like I was evidence. Like I was a living accusation he didn't want to claim. And I didn't understand why. Not then. Back in the kitchen, 18 candles flickered as I walked past the table with a garbage bag full of clothes. No suitcase. Just black plastic. Tyler didn't look up. Gary picked up the cake knife and sliced himself a piece. Happy adulthood, he muttered. Outside, Uncle Ray followed me onto the porch. The screen door closed behind us. He didn't hug me. He wasn't a hugging man. But he put his hand on my shoulder. You got somewhere to go? I'll figure it out. He nodded once. Then he said something I didn't understand until years later. One day he's going to know exactly what he threw away. I didn't respond. Because at 18 you don't feel like something valuable. You feel disposable. I walked down that driveway with $50 in my pocket and a garbage bag cutting into my fingers. What Gary didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I carried proof. And I would carry it for 11 years. Proof that I wasn't another man's mistake. Proof that silence protects liars. Proof that DNA doesn't bend just because a father's pride does. But that night, all I carried was humiliation. And a rumor already forming behind me. Because before I even made it to Uncle Ray's truck, Gary was back inside, telling the room what he'd been waiting years to say. Marlene admitted it before she died. He told them. She wasn't mine. And just like that, the lie became family history. The rumor spread faster than grief ever had. Gary didn't shout it from rooftops. He whispered it in kitchens, in church hallways, at the VFW after 2 beers. Marlene told me before she died. He'd say quietly, Dakota isn't mine. The power of a lie isn't volume. It's repetition. Within weeks, family stopped returning my calls. Cousins unfollowed me. An aunt who once sent birthday cards mailed back a wedding invitation I'd sent with "return to sender" written in thick black marker. No explanation. Just erasure. Silence protects the liar. And in our family, silence was tradition. I wanted to ignore it. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. I was in nursing school by then, working 12-hour shifts, paying rent, building something stable from nothing. But there's a particular kind of violence in being rewritten while you're still alive. I didn't just lose a father. I lost my origin story. And the worst part? A small part of me wondered. Not because I believed Gary, but because doubt is contagious. That's when Diane called. My mother's best friend. She hadn't spoken to Gary since the funeral. "Baby," she said, voice thick with cigarette smoke and anger. "I just heard what he's been saying." I gripped the phone tighter. "Is it true?" Silence. Then, "Your mother never said that." Not once. My lungs expanded for the first time in weeks. Diane didn't soften things. She never had. "You know what she did tell me," she continued. "She told me she caught him cheating while she was pregnant with you." The words didn't land immediately. They fought about it behind the VFW hall. I was there. I saw it. "Your mama stayed faithful." He didn't. Something shifted inside me. Slow. Mechanical. If Marlene had been faithful, then the lie wasn't confusion. It was projection. "He knows," Diane said quietly. "And he hates what you remind him of." Science doesn't lie. That's what she told me before hanging up. Science doesn't lie. The idea sat in my chest for weeks. I didn't confront him. Didn't argue. Didn't post online rebuttals. Instead, I waited. Thanksgiving gave me the opportunity. I hadn't been invited, but Nana had called, voice shaky. "Come by early," she whispered, "before he starts." I went. Gary barely acknowledged me. Tyler nodded stiffly. Dinner was strained. But I wasn't there for turkey. I was there for a coffee mug. He always drank from the same chipped blue one. World's best dad. I waited until he stepped outside to argue with Tyler about something in the driveway. Then I moved quietly. Napkin. Mug. Sealed bag. I left before dessert. 2 weeks later, the lab called. 99.998% probability of paternity. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. Not 70%. Not questionable. Not ambiguous. Certain. Gary was my father. Biology didn't flinch. I thought I would feel triumph. Instead, I felt something heavier. Validation wrapped in grief. Because proving he was my father didn't mean he'd become one. I printed the results. Placed them in a manila envelope. No note. No anger. Just fact. I mailed it to his house. Certified. Signature required. 3 days later it came back. Unopened. Refused. The envelope was stamped in red ink. Returned to sender. That was the moment I understood something crucial. Truth doesn't matter to someone committed to a lie. I placed the sealed envelope in my closet. Top shelf. Behind winter coats. Not because I was giving up. Because timing matters. Truth without leverage is just noise. And I wasn't interested in noise. Months passed. The rumor stayed alive. Gary continued telling people Marlene confessed. The story grew details. She cried. She apologized. She begged forgiveness. None of it true. But believable enough. Until Nana died. Heart failure. Quick. Quiet. At the funeral, Gary stood at the front like a grieving son. I stood in the back like a distant relative. After the burial, Uncle Ray found me near the oak trees. "She left something for you," he said. Not sentimental. Not jewelry. A sealed, notarized letter. In Nana's handwriting. And suddenly, 11 years of silence felt like they were about to end. Nana's letter was heavier than it looked. Not because of the paper. Because of the weight of what it meant. Uncle Ray handed it to me in the church parking lot after the funeral. The reception buzzed behind us. Casseroles, polite grief, people complimenting Gary on staying strong. Ray didn't speak. He just squeezed my shoulder once. The envelope had a gold notary seal. Nana had never done anything dramatic in her life. If she notarized it, she meant for it to matter. I didn't open it there. I waited until I was alone in my apartment that night. Kitchen table. Lamp light. Steady hands. Her handwriting was shakier than I remembered. Dakota, I should have told the truth sooner. I was afraid of losing my son. That fear made me lose my granddaughter instead. I stopped reading, because that was the first apology I had ever received. Gary did cheat. Behind the VFW hall, Marlene caught him. There was yelling. There were witnesses. Nana admitted she begged Marlene not to leave him, not to embarrass the family. Marlene stayed, not because she was guilty, because she was tired and pregnant. With me, there was no confession, no deathbed revelation, only Gary's shame and Nana's silence. I read the final paragraph 3 times. He knows you are his. He always knew. You look like him when you're angry. That's what scared him most. Something inside me finally aligned. I wasn't proof of infidelity. I was proof of his betrayal. Every time he looked at me, he saw the moment he was caught. I wasn't another man's mistake. I was his. And instead of facing it, he erased me. The notarized stamp sat at the bottom like a period at the end of a long lie. This wasn't rumor. This was testimony. From his own mother. I placed Nana's letter beside the unopened DNA results on my table. Science. Confession. Both pointing the same direction. For the first time in 11 years, I didn't feel defensive. I felt clear. A week later, Tyler called. That alone was unusual. He cleared his throat before speaking. Jenny's pregnant. I waited. And I've been thinking. Long pause. You're my sister. Not emotional. Not poetic. Just factual. It meant more than he knew. I know, I said. He exhaled slowly. Dad's throwing himself a 60th birthday party next month. Big thing. Church hall. Everyone's coming. I could hear the tension in his voice. He's planning to talk about legacy. Family. I almost laughed. Why are you telling me this? Because if you're ever going to say something, that's the night. There it was. Not revenge. Opportunity. I asked one question. Do you believe me? Another pause. Then, I believe DNA. It wasn't loyalty, but it was movement. The invitation arrived 3 days later. Formal. Printed. No personal note. I wasn't listed as daughter. Just Dakota Harlow. Like I was a guest. I held the envelope in my hands and thought about 18 candles. $50. A garbage bag. And 11 years of carrying proof like it was contraband. I didn't need to confront him privately anymore. He had built his lie publicly, so I would correct it the same way. Called Uncle Ray. You busy on the 14th? I asked. He didn't hesitate. I'll be in the truck. The night of the party I dressed simply. No drama. No anger. Just certainty. I placed the DNA results in one envelope. Nana's notarized letter in another. Then slipped both into my purse. Not as weapons. As anchors. Because truth doesn't shout. It waits. As Ray's truck idled outside the church hall, I looked through the window at the crowd gathering inside. Laughter. Folding chairs. A banner that read, Happy 60th, Gary, celebrating family and legacy. I stepped out of the truck. Ray leaned across the seat. You sure? I nodded. He gave me that same look from my 18th birthday. The one that said he believed I was worth something. Inside, Gary stood near the podium. Hand on Tyler's shoulder. Smiling wide. And just before I pushed open the door, I heard him laugh and say to someone near the front, She was never mine anyway. The room chuckled. And that's when I knew. Timing was over. The door didn't slam when I opened it. Didn't need to. Conversations softened anyway. There's something about unwanted truth walking into a room. It changes the air pressure. Gary saw me first. That flicker. That same 18-year-old panic behind 60-year-old eyes. Then the mask slid back into place. Well, he said loudly, lifting his drink. Didn't expect that. A few people laughed. Polite. Uncomfortable. Tyler didn't look surprised. He stepped back slightly, just enough to give me a clear path to the front. I didn't rush. Didn't shake. Didn't cry. For 11 years, I'd imagined this moment as explosive. But it wasn't. It was steady. Gary tapped the microphone. As I was saying, legacy matters. Blood matters. Family is built on truth. The irony was almost elegant. I waited until the applause faded. Then I spoke. You're right. My voice carried farther than I expected. Conversation stopped completely now. Gary smiled tightly. Dakota, this isn't really. No, I said calmly. It is. I stepped closer to the podium. No one stopped me. Because no one truly believes a quiet woman is dangerous. I've spent 11 years being told I wasn't yours, I continued. That I was proof of betrayal. A few heads turned toward him. He laughed again. Too fast. We've been through this. Don't start drama. I reached into my purse. Not quickly. Deliberately. Pulled out the sealed DNA results first. I didn't start anything, I said. I just finished it. The paper made a soft tearing sound as I opened it. You could hear someone cough near the back. I didn't read the whole report. Just the line that mattered. Probability of paternity. 99.98%. Silence. Not murmurs. Not gasps. Silence. Gary's face drained slowly, like someone had turned down the color saturation. He shook his head. That can be faked. I nodded once. That's why I brought something else. The second envelope felt warmer in my hands. He's lying, someone whispered near the front. I unfolded Nana's letter carefully. She wrote this before she died, I said. It's notarized. I didn't rush through her words. I let them breathe. I read about the VFW hall, the argument, the witnesses, the shame, the fear, and then the final line. He knows you are his. He always knew. The room shifted. Not loudly, but visibly. People stopped looking at me. They started looking at him. Gary gripped the podium so hard his knuckles blanched. That woman was confused, he snapped. Uncle Ray's voice cut through the air like clean steel. She wasn't. He stepped forward from the back of the hall. And when Ray moves, people listen. There were 4 of us outside that hall that night, Ray said evenly. You begged her not to leave you. Gary's jaw tightened. You're twisting things. No, Ray replied. You did. And that's when it happened. Not shouting. Not chaos. Just clarity spreading across faces. The pastor near the buffet table lowered his head slowly. Tyler crossed his arms, not defensive. Observing. Gary looked around, searching for support. For someone to laugh. For someone to defend him the way they always had. But no one did. Because lies survive on confidence. And his had cracked. You ruined this. He hissed at me quietly. I met his eyes. No, I said. You did. 18 years ago. The banner behind him, celebrating family and legacy, hung slightly crooked now. It felt symbolic. I didn't shout. Didn't insult him. Didn't cry. I simply placed the DNA report and Nana's letter on the podium in front of him. And stepped back. Legacy matters, I said softly. So does truth. Then I turned and walked toward the door. No dramatic exit. No applause. But as I passed through the crowd, people moved aside. Not to avoid me. To make room. Outside, the night air felt lighter. Uncle Ray followed me out. He didn't say, I'm proud of you. He didn't need to. Inside the hall, I could hear the low hum of uncomfortable conversations starting up again. But they weren't about me anymore. They were about him. And for the first time in my life, that felt right. I opened the truck door. Before getting in, I glanced back once. Through the window, I saw Gary standing alone at the podium. The banner behind him still said legacy. But the room no longer belonged to him. The silence didn't explode after that night. Spread. Slowly. Methodically. Like ink in water. For the first week, no one called. No angry voicemails. No dramatic confrontations. Just space. And for once, space didn't feel like exile. Felt like oxygen. Then the whispers began. Church members started asking questions. Not about me. About him. Did you know? Was it true? Why would he lie that long? Reputation isn't destroyed in a single moment. It erodes. Gary didn't lose his job. He didn't lose his house. But he lost something quieter. Authority. The easy way people used to nod when he spoke. The unquestioned respect. Tyler told me 2 weeks later that attendance at his Sunday Bible study dropped by half. No one announced a boycott. They just stop showing up. Because once a man lies about his own child, everything else sounds rehearsed. I didn't attend church, didn't post online, didn't explain myself further. Truth doesn't require marketing. One afternoon my phone buzzed. His name lit up the screen. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. Silence on the other end. Not angry breathing. Not shouting. Just quiet. Finally he spoke. You embarrassed me. His voice sounded older, thinner. I leaned back in my chair. You embarrassed yourself. A long exhale. You could have come to me privately. I almost smiled. I did. 11 years ago. He didn't deny it. Didn't argue. Because we both remembered that kitchen. That $50 bill. That garbage bag. You made me look weak, he muttered. And there it was. Not sorrow. Not apology. Image. It wasn't my job to protect your image, I said calmly. It was yours. The line went quiet again. Then softer, almost defensive. I thought if I denied it long enough, it would go away. I didn't, I replied. That was the first time he had nothing to say. No comeback. No scripture. No authority. Just breath. Before hanging up, he asked one thing. Why now? I considered the question carefully, because the answer wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. It wasn't humiliation. Because Nana finally told the truth, I said. And I was done carrying it alone. He didn't respond. He just hung up. 3 days later, I received a small envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a check. For $50. No note. No apology. Just the same amount he'd thrown at me 18 years earlier. I stared at it for a long time. Then I did something simple. I endorsed it and donated it to the local women's shelter. Under my mother's name. Marlene Harlow. Not because she needed redemption, but because she deserved recognition. For staying. For surviving. For never once telling me I was unwanted. A month passed. Then 2. The noise faded. People adjusted. Gary still attended church. But he didn't teach anymore. Tyler visited me more often. He never said, I'm sorry. But he introduced me to his wife as my sister without hesitation. And that was enough. One evening I stood in my apartment kitchen, same table, same lamp, and realized something quiet. I wasn't angry anymore. Not because he suffered, but because I didn't. For 18 years I thought proving I was his would fix something inside me. But the truth is, I didn't need his name. I needed my own. And now when people ask whose daughter I am, I answer simply, Marlene's. No bitterness. No explanation. Just fact. Legacy isn't blood. It's behavior. It's who shows up. It's who stays. That night at the party wasn't revenge. It was release. And the most unexpected part? I don't think about him much anymore. Because once the truth is spoken aloud, it stops echoing inside you.